Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 10th Annual National Hot Rod Association Spring Nationals. I'm Ted Mullins, your host, and with me, the voice of the National Hot Rod Association, Dave McClellan. A couple of days ago, over 600 cars started to qualify. We're down to the finals now, Dave, and it's very exciting.
Certainly is, Ted. This proves that professional drag racing, and this proves what it's all about. Excitement, thrills, speeds, record-setting times here at National Trail Raceway, and certainly the class of the field of professional drag racing is here present for this 10th Annual Spring Nationals.
We're about to get underway, so let's join the action.
WBNS-TV Sports presents Spring Nationals 1974 with Eyewitness Sports Director Ted Mullins and the voice of the NHRA, Dave McClellan. Brought to you in part by Anheuser-Busch, brewers of Busch, Budweiser, and Michelob. Busch delivers that natural beer taste with a fresh, clean edge. And by Nationwide. For quality and savings, shop where the pros shop. And for excitement, follow the Nationwide Rod Shop racing teams. And by Ethel Corporation. At Ethel, we believe automotive additives should say what they do and do what they say. And by the people in your town who bottle delicious Coca-Cola. It's the real thing.
Starting right out with the nitromethane burning monsters, the top fuel eliminators, and Carl Olson of El Toro, California, against Sarge Arciero of Broomall, Pennsylvania. Should be a good matchup, Dave.
Certainly should, Ted. This is Sarge Arciero. The car is called the Jade Grenade, and one of the finest racers from the East Coast area. Of course, Carl Olson, a former Winter Nationals champion, and really one of the top racers from throughout the West Coast, is here at the Spring Nationals trying to annex another NHRA national title.
Carl Olson's had a very successful campaign as a top fuel.
Yes, he has. He drives for his partner Mike Cool, the team of Cool and Olson. They've won the Winter Nationals. They won the famed Bakersfield March Meet, which is one of the more spectacular top fuel eliminator races throughout the country. Sarge Arciero, a very capable driver. They've had their share of bad luck, ups and downs throughout their career. But right now, they're the first race in the first round of top fuel eliminator.
We're starting to stage very carefully. We'll explain the staging situation, and they're off, and it looks like a pretty good matchup for the first race of the afternoon.
Very close race at this point, as you can see, crossing the finish line. It's Carl Olson there first.
Time of 6.28.
Our next pair pits a fellow from Enid, Oklahoma, Mike Wagner. He's doing his burnout right now, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And an Ohio resident, Paul Longenecker from Arcanum.
What do these engines produce as far as horsepower is concerned?
Ted, you would probably be accurate in saying anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 horsepower come from these nitromethane burning and supercharged dragsters. The engines now with cubic inch displacements nearing 500 cubic inches. Mike Wagner and Paul Longenecker.
Again, a very careful stage and a good start. And the winner, Mike Wagner, a time of 6.34, 225 miles an hour. Now, our next matchup, John Wiebe of Newton, Kansas. He'll be in the left lane against Ronnie Martin of Arlington, Texas. John Wiebe is the defending champion in top fuel.
Yes, he is. He won it all here 1 year ago, defeating Don Garlitz in the final run. John Wiebe hails from Newton, Kansas, a professional drag racer. The car powered by the Donovan engine. There are 3 specialty engines that are in use today. Here we see a burnout in slow motion. You can see the tires grow. The purpose of the burnout to warm the tires, to get them as soft as possible, and also as clean as possible, to provide them with the traction necessary to propel these cars through the quarter mile. Here's the staging sequence. Both cars pre-staged, now staged. Ronnie Martin, you saw a shot of him. John Wiebe hesitating momentarily there.
Losing something.
And
very
what a close
race.
6:59 losing for Ronnie Martin. 6:62 the winning time for John Wiebe. And here in slow motion, we'll talk about how you can go slower and yet win the race. You saw the smoke coming up from the tires of Ronnie Martin's. That means he's losing time as he goes down that quarter mile. And John Wiebe playing catch-up and caught him.
Our next race, Herm Peterson of Paul's Bowl, Washington. He'll be in the right lane against Dick LaHaye of DeWitt, Michigan.
This is a shot of LaHaye, and here is Herm Peterson. You see how the drivers are encased in this roll cage, a protective cage built around the drivers. They're staging, of course, all the cars doing burnouts and picking up the action as they leave the starting line. Dick LaHaye and Herm Peterson. Looked like LaHaye had the whole shot or the jump off the line.
Very
Herm
close.
Peterson, very close.
Time of 6:30, winning time for Herm Peterson.
Herm Peterson, of course, on the comeback trail after a very severe accident a year ago. He is probably to drag racing what Salt Walther is to championship car racing. Here you see exactly how close it was. Herm Peterson just barely nipping him. That line across the left edge of your screen is the finish line.
This matchup should be a fine one. Gary Beck of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, against Flip Schofield of Escondido, California.
Gary Beck, the national champion for 2 years in a row. He is the current national champion. He won the Winter Nationals race and was runner-up at the recent Gator Nationals thus far in 1974, and is probably the hottest thing going in the Top Fuel racing right now. Flip Schofield, another fine driver from California, qualified here at this 10th annual Spring Nationals.
I would say he lost a lot of traction there, Dave. A lot of smoke coming up as Gary Beck takes it with a time of 6.09, 230 miles an hour.
At 6:09, the lowest time thus far, is our next pair coming into the burnout area. We see this is Robert Struckness from Minot, North Dakota. North Dakota is not necessarily the hotbed of Top Fuel racing, but Robert Struckness doing a fine job qualifying into this field. Here we see Struckness, and it looks like starter Buster Couch pointing at something, calling a crewman over, and he gives the sign to cut it off to Robert Struckness. He pulls the fuel shutoff, which is used to shut these engines off, and a very dejected and unhappy Robert Struckness starts to head out of the car as Jim Booker from Westchester, Ohio, a suburb of Cincinnati, leaves the line with his Chevrolet-powered car. Here's Struckness.
A very dejected man, too, as Jim Booker takes a slow run down the track. Wonder what the problem could have been, Dave.
It could be something coming out of the engine, either oil or water, that would have gotten onto the track underneath the tires. Here is the only female driver in Top Fuel competition today. This is Shirley Cha-Cha Muldowney from Mount Clemens, Michigan, and qualified into this field.
She'll be matched against Grant Stoms of Edison, New Jersey.
Stoms is another one of those fine East Coast racers that you really don't hear a lot about in some cases, but certainly has made his name for himself on the East Coast and has done a fine job getting into this 16-car field at the 10th annual Spring Nationals. Shirley Muldowney competed here a year ago with a funny car. She has now converted over to the Top Fuel dragster. Here you see Shirley Cha-Cha Muldowney, the only woman holding a competition license to drive a Top Fuel dragster.
And driving a pink one, too. Watching the staging lights very carefully. They edge the cars into position, and they're off. And it looks like Stoms by a wide margin.
Excellent run for Stoms at a 6:17, 233 miles an hour. Here we have an interesting matchup. In the left-hand lane, you see him right there, is Clayton Harris. This is his first race since an accident at the Grand Nationals a year ago. He was not driving a car. He just slipped and fell and broke his leg. He had complications. This is the first time he's been back in competition. He's racing against Dave Settles, the driver for the Candies and Hughes team that won the race there and also won the recent Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida. But Clayton Harris back on the comeback trail. Right now, let's go down in the staging lanes and Ted Mullins.
Shirley, I think the first question is, are you a women's liver?
Yeah, Ted, I'd have to be being the only gal in this game.
Do they give you some rough times back in the pit there?
Not today. Years ago, they used to.
How did you get started in drag racing?
Heavy street racing on the streets about 16 years ago.
And then you advanced to funny cars, I believe, last year, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I went to gas dragsters first, then a dual-engine car, and then into the fuel-burning funny car. I had a lot of success the first year. And I took the test for the fuel-powered digger and got that license last year and came along to the new car this year.
It must give you quite a feeling of accomplishment to know you're the only licensed woman to drive a Top Fuel.
Yeah, because I told that to a friend of mine, Pete Robinson. He's gone now, but I told him someday I'd be the first, and I'd be the first to go 200 and 225, and I did so, and I'm pretty proud of it.
Do you worry about anybody breaking your time?
No, I think it'll be a little while before you see another gal.
Now we move into the funny car eliminations, possibly not the most dangerous, but certainly the most exciting to watch. And this matchup will pit Don Prudhomme of Granada Hills, California, in a 74 CUDA against Charlie Thurwanger of Dallas, Texas, also in a 74 car, this one a Vega.
Without question, Ted, these are the most exciting things to watch in drag racing, as the fiberglass replica bodies give the fan something to cheer for as far as product identification. In this case, the Plymouth Barracuda against the Chevrolet Vega, but also the superstars, Don Prudhomme, involved in this race against Mike Burkhart's Vega, Charlie Thurwanger up in smoke.
Lost the traction, so it'll probably be all for naught in this one as Don Prudhomme crosses the line at 6.42, 215 miles an hour.
Here we see it in slow motion. He gets off the line all right, and right there you see this cloud of smoke billowing out behind. That coming from the tires as they start to spin. He loses traction. Prudhomme not missing a beat. His engine performing magnificently, puts it through the quarter mile at a fine 6.42. Prudhomme has just been dominating funny car action throughout the year thus far.
Ed McCulloch, shown here of Fresno, California, a 74 Dodge Sport. He'll go against Paul Smith of Boynton Beach, Florida. He'll be in the left lane, McCulloch in the right lane.
There we saw a good example of how the mechanics and the driver get in and out of these cars. The body raises up from the front, the engine, the tubular chassis, all the fire equipment, the fire bottles, and you see here the face mask, the breather mask, and the full fire suit required of all the drivers in these funny cars and in many other types of competition cars in NHRA competition.
They also carry bottles of Freon in the car, 2 bottles, one on each side of the engine in case of a fire.
Yes, Ted, these can actually be located in any position. They were located there in this Revolution car of Ed McCulloch on either side of the engine and attached to the chassis, but they are loaded with Freon, and in case of the fire, of engine explosion or fire, the driver just simply hits a button. The Freon is plumbed throughout the body of the car, into the driver's compartment, and also into the engine to extinguish any fire.
Pre-staging lights go on as the drivers inch closer to the starting line. Now we have stage for both cars. And a good start. This should be exceptionally close.
Well, close is hardly the word for it. The win going to Paul Smith at a much slower elapsed time than Ed McCulloch. Must have gotten a much better start. 7 seconds flat to a 6:84 for Ed McCulloch. Here we see a bit of an advantage for Paul Smith. He gets a little bit towards the center line, corrects, comes back in, and it is very close. Anybody's race at this point. You see right there, Paul Smith winning it over Ed McCulloch by less than a fender length.
Back at the starting line, Tom Prock of Utica, New York in a 74 Dodge. He'll be in the right lane.
This is Paul Radici and Wise out of St. Louis, Missouri in the Chevy Vega. And looking in and seeing Radici, the goggles, the fire mask, the breather mask where they can breathe through those filters and the nitro fumes won't bother them at all.
Tremendous concentration at this point.
Really, this is where it is all happening, is at the starting line, and these drivers concentrating completely on getting the best reaction time possible. A good race to this point.
This will be very close.
Some smoke out of the Radici and Wise car, obviously the motor giving him some problems. 6:57 for Tom Prock. And let's take a look at this one again in slow motion. They leave the line together. Things look very good at this point, as you can see. And there it is. Something going awry, the smoke starting to come out, meaning the motor is going away. Tom Prock not having a bit of problem. He goes through in Phil Castronova's car.
A name a lot of fans will recognize around the country, Tom McEwen of Fountain Valley, California. He's also known as the Mongoose. Cheryl Greer of Warner Robins, Georgia. He'll be in a 74 Mustang, and McEwen in a 74 Duster.
That Mongoose moniker came from a long-standing rivalry with a good friend, by the way, Don Prudhomme. Tom McEwen known as the Mongoose. Prudhomme getting the first label tied on him as the Snake because of his reaction times at the starting line just as quick as a snake. Well, McEwen, not one to let anything go by, decides, well, if Prudhomme is the Snake, then I'm the Mongoose.
And they've had some exciting matches over the years.
Certainly had. Over a decade for each of the drivers. McEwen with a fine start.
Oh, this is going to be very close. And it's going to be McEwen, but just barely. 0.02
of a second slower, but the advantage coming right at the starting line over Cheryl Greer. You also saw Cheryl Greer slowing a little bit, 206 miles an hour. Maybe he thought, and this is something to look for in this slow motion, maybe he thought that McEwen could never catch him, because we'll see here, but it looks like he may be leading going into this point. He is, but McEwen right alongside of him and drives right past him just before the finish line.
Kosti Ivanov of Boston, Massachusetts. He'll be driving a 74 Vega. He'll be in the right lane. Dale Paldy of Van Nuys, California, the left lane in the 74 Pontiac.
That Pontiac is a Grand Am body style. There are a couple of those entered at this Spring Nationals, and a most unique car and with tremendous horsepower out of Mickey Thompson's shop. Dale Paldy up in smoke. The Boston Shaker of Kosti Ivanov, a 661, taking the win easily over a smoking Dale Paldy.
Explaining that once again, you see a lot of smoke like that. There's no traction. The tires aren't adhering to the track. You're not getting any traction. The horsepower is going to waste.
What they're doing, Ted, is just making another burnout, but not at the right time.
Gene Snow of Fort Worth, Texas. He'll be in the left lane. He's an old veteran of this. Don Schumacher, Park Ridge, Illinois, in a 74 Vega, the right lane. A matchup of identical cars.
Fine shot there of Gene Snow inside the car. You can see him inside the roll cage, very similar to the cage design on a Top Fuel dragster. Schumacher, of course, the Revell Super Shoe, the Revell Snowman, Gene Snow. Tremendous start for Snow. Something apparently down on horsepower for Schumacher as Snow streaks to the win to a 667.
And 6.93 for Don Schumacher. Not a very good race at all. Al Segrini of Silver Springs, Maryland, in the left lane. Leroy Goldstein of Mission Viejo, California. He'll be driving a 74 Satellite, a good burnout.
Al Segrini kind of losing himself in the smoke in the right-hand lane, driving for Whipple and Mr. Ed. The name Ed Wills, known amongst funny car racers particularly. He builds a number of the bodies that are used on these cars. Art Whipple, one of the finer mechanics around in the business today. Al Segrini driving this beautiful Black Magic car from Silver Springs, Maryland.
Again, they'll be staging very carefully. Again, the concentration, because in drag racing, it all happens at the line.
The advantage that can be gained at the starting line is in, look at that. Leroy Goldstein going instantly sideways right at the starting line, and Segrini just eases her through.
He slows down. He recorded a 7:05 for that run.
Now look at this. Here you see it in slow motion, almost as if it's on a pivot. I bet he doesn't go 4 feet forward and almost turns the car completely to the right and almost into the guardrail, it looks like. Now he gets it corrected and starts to swing back around. The photographer's moving back as that fiberglass-bodied 1,800 horsepower monster heads right straight for them.
Good reaction time on the photographer's part.
Also good reaction time on the part of Leroy Goldstein. He was headed straight for the guardrail and yet saved any damage to that fiberglass body.
What could have caused that, do you think?
Could have been anything, Ted. Could have been water under the tires, one wheel pulling, the other one not, like you would drive a Caterpillar tractor, something like that. Could be some problems in the differential, also causing it to turn that way.
Now back at the starting line, John Shoemaker of Farmington, Michigan. He'll be in the left lane. Larry Fullerton of Jacksonville, Florida. Fullerton driving a 74 Mustang and Shoemaker a 74 Pontiac.
Fullerton's Trojan Horse Mustang is one of the few 74 Mustang II bodies in funny car racing today. It certainly is one of the lowest and wind cheating that you could ask for. He also has problems putting all that horsepower to the ground, too.
And there's the time. 7:46 the winning time for 14:72 for the losing effort. Now let's move to Pro Stock and round one. First matchup, Bob Glidden of Greenwood, Indiana in the 73 Pinto against Wayne Gapp of Birmingham, Michigan. He'll be in the left lane in the 73 Pinto.
Pro Stock of Ted is the battle of the super hot cars, similar to what you see on the street. These are, in this case, Gapp and Roush bringing their 74 Mustang to this event. In the right-hand lane, the man that won the Pro Stock title at the Nationals a year ago at Indianapolis Raceway Park, Bob Glidden in the Pinto. These cars are powered by engines using only gasoline. Here's the world champion Wayne Gapp. Using only gasoline, they are limited to 2 4-barrel carburetors and considerable chassis modifications to allow them to run elapsed times in the high 8s and low 9s, speeds over 150.
An extremely close race. Bob Glidden 9:18, Wayne Gapp a 9.29.
Here's the car of Billy Stepp from Dayton, Ohio. Bobby Ewell doing the driving. Reed Wisnett from Atlanta, Georgia, be lining up in the left-hand lane. Wisnett making his burnout here. much shorter than the top fuel funny car burnouts. All they're trying to do is heat up the tires, provide the traction. There's the concentration on the face of Bobby Ewell. And the acceleration as these cars leave the starting line.
Extremely close race at this point, and it's going to be Bobby Ewell, a time of 9.06 to 9.27, and a speed of 145 miles an hour, the winning speed. Dave Canners of Troy, Michigan, a 74 Hornet. He'll be in the right lane. Kelly Chadwick of Amarillo, Texas, a 74 Vega. He'll be in the left lane.
This car is powered by different sized engines. You will find the hemispherical combustion chamber engine in the Chrysler product cars, the small block Chevrolet in the Chevy Vega. Maskin and Canners using a small block engine in the Hornets. They are varied by weight to allow them to compete on an even basis.
At the line, extremely close, 9.23 the winning time, 9:31 for Chadwick, a losing effort, and there is the margin of victory, less than a half a car length.
We talk about an even basis, that's what it's all about.
Roy Hill of High Point, North Carolina in a 73 Duster. Kelly Hahn of Tampa, Florida in the left lane in a 74 Duster.
The cars are paired in the first round, Ted, by the way they qualified. Some 30 pro stockers were entered for this event, over 30 of them, and they qualified both Friday and Saturday leading up to today's finals. And the 16 quickest go into the final eliminations, and we're seeing them right now in first round of eliminations. Roy Hill from High Point, North Carolina on an easy race here. Some problems obviously for Kenny Hahn. 9:26 the time for Hill at 149 miles an hour. Here's Sonny Bryant out of Orange, California. He's driving the Camaro. And you saw and heard a backfire there, and apparently maybe some problems. This is Scott Shafarov from New York. Shafarov nodding that he will get a single run as Sonny Bryant with problems. You saw it backfire right there after the burnout, and a tough break for him.
Scott Shafarov just cruising down the strip at a 9.25, and Sonny Bryant's car being pushed away from the starting line. Could have been any one of a number of things caused the problem.
Certainly could. Here we have another example of the Camaro. Now these use the 427 cubic inch engines, or the big blocks as they're known as, and again must carry more weight than their competitors such as this Hornet, the AMC Hornet of Wally Booth. Two cars making up the American Motors Racing Team, the factory-backed team. Wally Booth winning the Gator Nationals back in March. First time ever for an American Motors car into the winner's circle in Pro Stock Eliminator.
Let's talk about what they're using for burnouts. Water or bleach? Or...
Up until about this time a year ago, the racers could use any type of compound they wanted. Liquid, rubber, bleach, you name it, and it was used at a racetrack. But recently, the innovations in tires and also the improvements in traction compounds that are applied to the strips, it's become necessary to hold everybody to use just water. And the water is provided by the racetrack. It's poured under the tires just to allow the tires to get an easy start.
We've got a race on our hands in this one.
We sure do. Richie Zool trying his best. 9:15 the winning time for Wally Booth, a 9:26 for Zool, and it was very close in the lights. The American Motors Hornet using the small block engine, the big block rat-motored Chevrolet of Richie Zool. We'll just see how close right here. Let's watch.
11/100ths of a second separating the winning and losing effort there.
1,320 feet is the length of a racetrack at a drag strip. 1/4 of a mile, and you can see less than a car length separating them after a heads-up start.
In the right lane, Ken Dondero of Malvern, Pennsylvania in a 74 Vega. Jim Holleran of Hillside, Illinois in the left lane, a 74 Maverick.
And here's the story behind this race, this matchup, is the 74 Vega, the Grumpy's toy, normally driven by Bill Jenkins. But Jenkins relinquishing the driver's seat for this event to Ken Dondero. And you see Bill Jenkins right there acting as crew chief for this race, looking on. Here's the concentration on the face of Dondero. They still got Bill Jenkins' name on the side of the car.
We have pre-staged, and we are staged, and the tree goes green.
On one side of the tree, the left lane leaving a big red light for Jim Halloran. You saw him there. He knew that he had to take a chance at getting a hole shot. 9:15 the winning time, 9:34 with a red light, and losing automatically at the starting line was Jim Halloran. You can see how much earlier he left there on the slow motion shot over Ken Dondero.
And he got a traffic ticket. Joe Satmary of Hammond, Indiana will be in the left lane in the 73 Camaro.
Sam Giannino from Royal Oak, Michigan in the 74 Vega. And here's a perfect example of the small car, small engine, big car, big engine that is in pro stock today. Giannino using the 330 cubic inch engine, and a tremendous start for Satmary in the big block 427 type Camaro.
Joe Satmary, the winner, a time of 9.31, 9:52 the losing effort, 147 miles an hour for the winning speed. Exciting racing. Spring Nationals. Now moving back to top fuelers, round 2, Jim Booker will be going against Dave Settles in the first matchup.
Ted, we're looking here at the car of Jim Booker. This is one of those super light entries, and it is powered by a Chevrolet engine. Without question, Jim has had the most successful Chevrolet dragster ever. Held the national record at one time and has been highly competitive, making his burnout here. Jim Booker, he's from Westchester, Ohio, suburb of Cincinnati.
Dave, let's talk about the burnout we just saw. The tires actually grow. The foot actually becomes smaller on the track as they move down the track.
Yes, it certainly does. You see here the tire growing in height. You look right to the right edge of that right tire, and you see how the bead is pulled in off the rim. Well, that's the centrifugal force. They grow sometimes as much as 6 to 8 inches in height. The competition here for Jim Booker is very stiff. This is the team of Candies and Hughes from Houma, Louisiana. Dave Settles out of Dallas, Texas is the driver. The Candies and Hughes team, noted in past years for funny cars, concentrating their efforts solely on the top fueler. Both cars hazing the tires, smoking them just a little bit off the line, but a close race.
A close race indeed. Jim Booker winning it by 0.04 of a second.
6.46 to 6.50. That is the elapsed time it takes to travel a standing start quarter of a mile from the starting line to this finish line. You'll see right there where you see the front part of the body of Jim Booker's car leading over the finish line.
Our next matchup, John Wiebe of Newton, Kansas, will be in the left lane against Herm Peterson. And Wiebe is the defending top fuel champion here at Spring Nationals.
Interesting story about Herm Peterson and the Peterson and Fitz car. They're all the way from Paulsbo, Washington. Herm Peterson suffered a serious accident a year ago, or about in July of a year ago, and was very severely burned. He has come back and is right now very, very competitive, matched up against John Wiebe in this quarterfinal round.
And Peterson apparently having some trouble with his engine, as John Wiebe wins it a 6.53 to a 6.58.
Very close race according to the times, but remember that each lane has its own individual clock. So the clock does not start for either lane until the car in that lane leaves. You saw there Wiebe a little bit out of shape, and here's the smoke out of the engine of Herm Peterson, and that spells trouble.
Checking the speed on that, Herm Peterson 185 miles an hour with the engine problem there at the end, and Wiebe 193 miles an hour.
But as you can see, Wiebe had his parachute out as he went across the finish line.
Gary Beck going against Grant Stoms. Stoms will be in the left lane. Gary Beck, a favorite here at National Trail Raceway, will be in the right lane.
Gary Beck has to be a favorite wherever he goes. He is the current national champion, having won that title 2 years in a row. Has been very, very strong. Recorded low elapsed time of round number 1 with a 6.09 second blast. Gary Beck from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. You see him concentrating on the starting system, making his final little burnout towards the starting line. Grant Stoms saying everything is okay. He from Edison, New Jersey.
And Gary Beck getting a great jump on this one. Tremendous time of 6.03, 236 miles an hour.
6:24 for Grant Stoms is nothing to sneeze at, but he matched up against the toughest guy running right now in top fuel eliminator racing, and that is Gary Beck. You see him leading into the traps here. The parachute starting to deploy as he crosses the finish line, going 236 miles an hour.
This matchup, Carl Olson, a favorite of many drag race fans and well known to them, will go against Mike Wagner. Wagner to be in the left lane, Olson in the right lane.
The team of Cool and Olson from Southern California, El Toro. Enid, Oklahoma's own Mike Wagoner. Here is the concentration of Carl Olson. Approaching the staging beam, tightly encased in the roll cage is Mike Wagoner. They leave the line together.
And Carl Olson is the winner, a time of 6:15, 229 miles an hour to a losing effort of 6.61.
6:15, a very creditable time. The speed of 229 indicates that he was driving it very hard. The Cool and Olson car performing flawlessly here. The parachute starting to deploy as he crosses the finish line. The sound that you hear in the background, the cackling in the pipes of the funny cars, and what a matchup here. Two of the greatest names in drag racing today. In the right-hand lane, the U.S. Army-sponsored Barracuda of Don the Snake Prudhomme. In the tower lane, the Plymouth Duster. On the left-hand lane, that is Tom the Mongoose McEwen, sponsored by the U.S. Navy. It's Army-Navy, Ted, all over again.
And a couple of good friends, too, Dave. They've been racing against each other and with each other for a long number of years.
Well over a decade of experience in both of these drivers. They are professional drag racers, and this is how they make their living. Tom McEwen in the left lane, Don Prudhomme in the right-hand lane.
Taking plenty of time to make sure everything is just perfect before they go to the line.
Prudhomme is noted for his starting line reflexes. Let's see how he does. And the jump going to McEwen, but he goes up in smoke. Prudhomme, another flawless run through the quarter mile, 6.45. It's just like clockwork. He knocks him down, 6:45 at 193 miles an hour.
Kosti Ivanov is back for this run against Al Segrini this time. Segrini in the left lane. Ivanov will be in the right lane.
Here's Kosti Ivanov against Al Segrini. Two East Coast cars, Boston, Massachusetts, and Silver Springs, Maryland. The tree goes green. They leave the starting line together.
Great race, extremely close. Kosti Ivanov, 6.56, 207 miles an hour, 6:67 the losing effort, 209 miles an hour.
That 6.56 indicates the amount of time it took that car of Kosti Ivanov to cover 1,320 feet from that standing start a quarter of a mile away to where he crosses the line right there at the finish line. The timing handled by electronic light beams across the track, and completely electronic and completely automatic.
Veteran Gene Snow back again for another run. He'll be in the lane nearest you, the tower lane, the left lane, against Tom Prock.
The crew underneath the body of Gene Snow, you see there how they lift it up. That's how they get into the engine and how the driver gets in and out of the car, frantically working around the car of Snow. But apparently everything's okay. He makes another short burnout. Tom Brock driving for Phil Castronova from Utica, New York. A very tough competitor for Gene Snow, who you see right here.
Gene Snow, a man who's been around drag racing for a number of years, a very experienced, a very veteran driver. We have pre-staging and the crews working behind, getting the vehicles prepared to follow them down the track. We have the stage. We're off, and Tom Prock having some trouble going up in smoke. No traction. Gene Snow, an easy win, 6.86, 180 miles an hour. He backed off when he saw he had the win.
That's right, Ted. The 180 miles an hour, indicating that he did not drive it all the way through the traps, shutting it off very early. You see the cloud of smoke behind Tom Prock. That means he's making a burnout, but he's making it about 10 feet on the wrong side of the starting line. Here's how they start these cars, with an electric starter attached to the supercharger. That bright red bottle you see down strapped to the chassis is the fire bottle, loaded with Freon, one on each side. In case of a fire, the driver just pushes a button. It's plumbed throughout the car to the driver's compartment, to the engine compartment in this Fireball Vega. Paul Smith driving from Boynton Beach, Florida. That in the case of a fire.
And he'll be going against John Shoemaker in the left lane.
Shoemaker using one of the unique Grand Am Pontiac bodies, while Paul Smith, seen here, is in the Chevrolet Vega.
Let's explain the starting situation, the lights there. We have pre-stage, and then the stage is 16 inches later.
Approximately 16 inches later is another light beam for the staging. Both these cars up in smoke. Here it's who can backpedal or who can get the tires to couple back up first, and it was Paul Smith. 7:21 at 193. As John Shoemaker going up in smoke, the car starting to get out of control. He headed it towards this. There you see it going towards the guardrail. He had to lift completely. Paul Smith was able to backpedal just enough to where the tires coupled back up. He carried it on through. This is the Fireball Vega from Boynton Beach, Florida. Paul Smith advancing another round in Funny Car Eliminator here at the Spring Nationals. Let's go down now into the staging lanes. Ted has another interview.
Wally, we are indeed experiencing another fantastic Spring Nationals here at National Trail.
Well, we couldn't be happier. This is our 10th annual, and I'm sure it's going to be the best. We've got the greatest weather conditions, I think, that you could ask for, and probably the finest field that we've ever had in this particular event's history.
Let's talk briefly about the drag racing history, Wally. It has grown by leaps and bounds in the last 10 or 15 years.
Well, it has been escalating. I think some of the conditions that have happened in this country have been responsible for improving it rather than restricting it. We're finding as production performance cars have more or less gone away in the automotive market, why it makes the drag racing field and a place to run cars and tune them and do things with them more valuable to people who like to do that and people who like to watch it. And so we've been experiencing a continuing growth in drag racing, and of course we now are the world's largest auto racing organization, and we think it's going to keep right on going up.
We now have an exciting new category, Pro Comp. And Dave, let's talk about that while we're watching the first racer stage.
This is a new category for 1974, Ted, and it matches up all types of cars. Here we see Wayne Ernst, and apparently he's having some problems as he's looking at his crew, and he doesn't look very happy, and taking off his fire gloves, you can figure there's something wrong. He drives what's known as an A-fuel dragster. It is an injected engine using nitromethane. His competition, who has the single run, is Dave Mack. He drives a gas-burning dragster, but is supercharged. They are handicapped on the basis of weight, engine size, and the type of fuel used. So you see all different types of cars. We'll be seeing matchups between dragsters and funny cars, supercharged cars against injected cars, and it really has provided some of the greatest racing seen yet in 1974.
In our second matchup, Ron Boggs in a Double B funny car. He'll be going against Don Girardeau in a Double A dragster.
Right, the Double B funny car designation indicates that it is burning alcohol instead of its big brother that uses nitromethane, such as you saw a moment ago with Don Prudhomme and Tom McEwen and the like.
And a good race, a good close one at 7.22 for Boggs, a winning time, 194 miles an hour.
And now remember, that car is running on alcohol. It is very similar, almost, in fact, it is identical to the nitro-burning cars. The only difference is the type of fuel used. You see how close the racing is. Here is Ron Boggs in the funny car, about a half a car length ahead of Don Girardeau, and Girardeau just almost caught him at that finish line point.
Jim Scott, a Double A dragster, in the right lane, going against Dale Hall, who will be in the left lane.
He's driving what we call a B-fuel dragster, Dale Hall. That is the conventional front-engine style dragster using an injected small-block Chevrolet engine using nitromethane for fuel. Jimmy Scott, the winningest driver thus far in Pro Comp, driving the supercharged dragster of Al Weiss from Canoga Park, California, on gasoline. Let's see how close this one is.
Another close one. 7:16 for Jim Scott, the winning time. 189 miles an hour. 7:32, the losing effort. 187 miles an hour.
The handicapping system here, by using the engine displacement, the car weight, and the type of fuel used, has worked out very well. Here we see a supercharged engine against an injected one, and less than 5 feet separating them at the finish line.
Ken Veeney in the right lane going against Jeg Coughlin, both driving Double B funny cars.
Jeg Coughlin is from Columbus, Ohio. He is driving a car powered by the late model Hemi. Veeney's Vega is obviously a Chevrolet Vega that is really brought down low to the ground, trying to cheat the wind as much as possible. It uses a Chevrolet engine, both cars powered by alcohol.
We have free stage. Should be an exciting race, and staged, and Coughlin almost loses it, swirling down the track. Backed off when he saw he was having some difficulty.
Coughlin doing a great job of keeping that car from going into the guardrail, because with that fiberglass body, while he is protected very well, you can see right here, he heads right straight for it and just almost clips it with the tail of the car. The car swinging around now and starting to go into a skid, swings the other direction. He brings it under control, and Jeg Coughlin of Columbus doing a masterful driving job as Ken Veeney streaks on to a win at 7.30 seconds. That's the quarterfinal round of Pro Comp.
Moving right into the next category, Pro Stock Eliminator Round 2. And this will have Bob Glidden. He'll be in the right lane.
I think this is going to be Billy the Kid Stepp once again. In the right-hand lane. Bobby Ewell doing the driving. He is matched up against the AMC Hornet of Wally Booth. Here you see Wally Booth, who is the Gator Nationals champion. He won it back in March down in Gainesville, Florida. And the national record holder, Billy the Kid Stepp from Dayton, Ohio. Bobby Ewell does the driving. The Hornet of Booth and the Dodge Sport of Billy Stepp and Bobby Ewell. Should be a tremendous race here. Two very, very strong competitors. Motors brought up the RPMs and they leave the line together. This will be a close one. It'll take the electronic judge at the finish line to decide it.
Well, a close one indeed. No time for Bobby Ewell. Well, how would you explain that, Dave?
Well, it could be any problem, problem with the clocks, a resetting of the clock such as that. But the whole point of drag racing is it's he who gets there first. And as you can see right here, it is Bobby Ewell getting there first, regardless of what the time is. The only time plays any importance in it is when you're running in handicap racing as far as records go or as far as qualifying. In eliminations, it's the guy that gets there first.
Joe Satmary will be in the left lane against Dave Canners in round 2 of Pro Stock.
This is the other half of the American Motors racing team. Dave Canners at the wheel, Joe Satmary driving one of the big block Camaros, the 427 type cubic inch engine in the bigger Camaro.
We're watching them, Dave, as they stage, and in this particular category, they are blocking off part of the lane with a device there to keep them from coming directly down the middle. Why would that be?
Well, you try to create as broad a path at the starting line of high traction area where the rubber is actually burned into the track, so you sort of work your way across the track and allowing the cars to do their burnouts and provide as much traction as possible. A great start by Satmary. He's done an outstanding job thus far at this event, and he does it here, 9.30. As I said, a great start. He put a hole shot on Dave Canners and won it, as Canners went much quicker at a 9.23. You can see how close it is again at the finish from our finish line camera in the slow motion stop action. Less than a fender length separating the two cars as we move into the next pair.
That would be Bob Glidden going against Scott Shafaroff. Shafaroff in the left lane, Glidden in the right lane.
This is the classic Ford versus Chevrolet battle. The Pinto of Bob Glidden, Scott Shafaroff in the and see Shafaroff starting to roll right there. He rolled right through the light beams and gave himself a red light, which automatically disqualifies him, regardless of who's leading at the finish.
Glidden's time, 9.12 at 152 miles an hour.
Red light for Shafaroff, automatic disqualifications. You see him rolling early there, the reaction of his crew, the clasping of the head saying, oh no. Here we have Ken Dondero driving for Bill Jenkins. This is one of the first races in quite some time that Bill Jenkins has not been behind the wheel of his little Chevy Vega, but he's turned over the driving chores for this, the 10th annual Spring Nationals, to Ken Dondero. His competition from High Point, North Carolina is Roy Hill. Hill just completing his burnout. Jenkins out directing traffic for Ken Dondero, acting as crew chief at this event.
I wonder how he feels after having been the driver all these years. Now he's turning it over to somebody else.
Well, that's a very tough thing to do, I would think, Ted. You feel that you're really good. Dondero is one of the best. You see him concentrating here on the start. All important, the start, and a red light for Ken Dondero, a very, very strange occurrence for him because he normally is not one that will take tremendous risks, and certainly with Bill Jenkins' car, the performance capabilities, you just don't have to do it. 9:22, the losing time, the winning time, 9:51, and that is pure disgust and dejection. Bill Grumpy Jenkins.
And this is competition in the super stock category, one of the more popular events, as Ronnie Sirianni does a burnout. He'll be going against Butch Leal. Leal in the left lane, Sirianni in the right lane.
Ted, super stock racing is just what it implies. They are souped up stock type cars, similar to those that you see driven on the street. Here is Butch Leal in the 65 Plymouth, the Chevy Camaro of Bennett and Sirianni. They operate on a handicap basis where the slower car gets a physical head start. You see the tree counting down unequally there, and the Camaro with the lead over Butch Leal. This is where the catch-up comes into drag racing, and Butch Leal trying to catch him. Can he do it? The finish line shows he did just barely.
His time, 10.63 for Butch Leal to an 11.28 for Ronnie Sirianni.
The handicap given to Ronnie Sirianni is based on the national record for the class car he is running. One thing about drag racing, there is something there for everybody, regardless of what type of car you like to drive, whether you'd be a top fuel dragster or a super stocker. NHRA-style drag racing has something for everybody. And here is the bye run. There were an unequal number of cars in this round, so Bobby Warren from Clinton, North Carolina, getting a single run. Each car must make the same number of runs as his competitor.
One of the real fun categories is the modified, and everybody dreams, I think, at one time or another of having the old Roadster.
Certainly do, and this is where the Roadsters, the Coupes, the sedans, they all reside. It used to be in the earlier days of drag racing that the 32 Fords just dominated these classes. But right now, it's the more modern vehicles. Here we see the Chevy Corvette of Jerry Ault coming at us in the right-hand lane, looking at the cars. Paul Schley with the Volkswagen from Santa Ana, California, losing on that run to Ault. Ault at an 11.12. He's from Dayton, Ohio. Losing time for Schley an 11.24. You can see they were very closely matched as they left the starting line, and it's hard to believe that that Volkswagen is competing almost on a heads-up basis, that with a four-cylinder Volkswagen engine to the V8 in the Corvette.
And here's the Roadster, perhaps I was thinking about and dreaming about. It's driven by Joseph DeSantis. He'll be going against Jim Griffin. Griffin in the left lane, DeSantis in the right lane.
And there's Joe DeSantis. That's right, concentrating on that starting system. The head start, we'll see it count down. A tremendous head start for Jim Griffith over the Street Roadster, and here comes DeSantis. Like you say, everybody dreams about having one of these, but I don't know whether everybody dreams of going 150 miles an hour in one or not.
Winning time, 9:28 for DeSantis, 11:27 for Jim Griffin.
Car capable of speeds upwards of 150 miles an hour. Jim Griffith, with his big head start, still unable to hold off the top-end charge of Joe DeSantis and the Street Roadster, taking the lead as he goes into the traps at the finish line and winning the race. Right now, Ted's back down in the staging lanes, this time to talk with Buster Couch.
Buster, you've worked around starting line for a long, long time. You start all the major events?
Yes, sir. All the National Hot Rod Association's major events and quite a few in my own division. I've been doing this approximately 11 years.
What does it do to your hearing?
Well, earlier, a few years ago, I had a little trouble with my hearing because the car's so loud, but I have some special plugs I put in my ear now that knocks out the pain thrust of them, being so close to the cars, but yet let me hear the engines.
Now, explain briefly how the Christmas tree works.
Well, the tree works this order. You see the yellow lights at the top, the two small bulbs. When the cars pull up the stage, they light the first lights. That's called pre-stage. Then they have approximately 16 inches. They move into the staging lights. Then when they hit the staging lights and they're both staged and the car's positioned and the driver's ready, I flip the button on the box I have here and it activates the tree. And if they leave before the green, too bad, they get a red light.
4 categories of competition are represented in sportsman or handicap racing here. Actually, 3 of them are handicap, 1 is heads-up, sportsman category racing. We're looking now at competition eliminator, and that's right, that is a 6-cylinder powered dragster. Hard to believe that it would be competitive. It runs speeds upwards of 145 miles an hour. It's racing against a V8 powered dragster. Again, the handicap coming into play here. The V8 car is Russ Flegel from Indianapolis, Indiana. John Baines from Louisville, Kentucky, driving the 6-cylinder dragster. Here's Flegel with his protective fire suit on, and he is driving the V8 dragster. The head start going to the 6-cylinder about a half a second.
And it's going to be Russ Flegel, a time of 8:46 to 9:25 for John Baines, a speed of 159 miles an hour.
Of course, the point here is not only must you be competitive against the guy you're running against, but you also must be able to run fairly close to your record, particularly when you get into NHRA championship competition like this, because the handicap is based on the national record for your class. There we see Russ Flegel taking the win. The next race, there are two bodied cars. This one a late model and the other an early model type. Altered cars, that is the class designation, and they both run the same class, so it will be a heads-up race.
Dave Weir in the right lane against Bob Riffle. Bob Riffle just running off a quick burnout there. He is from Columbus, Ohio, driving for the Nationwide team.
Dave Weir from Spring Valley, New York, and this is literally, Ted, the old versus the new. The old design altered car, that is a Bantam Roadster, against the new Dodge of Bob Riffle, and they're going side by side, and this will be a close one, you can tell right now.
Extremely close, and it's Dave Weir, a time of 9:04 to 9.10 for Bob Riffle, a speed of 153 miles an hour.
The jubilant reaction of his crewman kind of told you who won that race, I think, Ted. Here we see it again in slow motion and stop action, and let's just see how close it really was. Dave Weir in the Bantam Roadster, as you can see, just a wheel length and a little more ahead of Bob Riffle in the altered.
Now back to Pro Comp and round 3. Dave Mack in the right lane. You're taking a look at him right there against Ron Boggs, who will be in the left lane. And this is the new category this year. Different cars, different weights, but all matched up for good competition.
And these cars run on a heads-up basis. The handicapping is done by the weight, the cubic inch, and the type of fuel used, the cubic inch of the engine. Within the cars themselves, no handicap. It is a pro start, 1 amber, and then a green light, and then they leave. And tremendous racing in this category.
And this is why it's so exciting. Dave Mack, a 7.18 the winning time, 187 miles an hour, 7.25 for the losing effort at 191 miles.
And this is another close race. The funny car against the dragster, and certainly Pro Comp has proved that cars can be handicapped on this basis, and you can't get much closer than that. I'll tell you, Ted, that is really close.
Double A dragster Jim Scott going against Double B funny car Ken Veeney. Veeney in the left lane, Scott in the right lane.
That's a shot of Veeney inside his funny car, the protective fire suit and the mask on. And Jimmy Scott, the car that won the Gator Nationals, Pro Comp, the Sports Nationals, the recent all-sportsman category race. He won that one. He is the winningest Pro Comp racer in the country today with that double-A gas dragster owned by Al Weiss of Canoga Park.
And it's going to be Jim Scott, a time of 7:14, 189 miles an hour, 7:43 the losing time, 191 miles an hour. What began 2.5 days ago is now boiled down to the semifinals. Dave, let's take a look and see what we'll see in the semifinal round.
Ted, we started with 16 cars in each field. Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock, and the best in the country are here, and they're proving it today by their performances. Gary Beck, the national champion in Top Fuel, has low ET at 6.03 seconds at over 236 miles an hour. He will meet up against the defending champ, John Wiebe, in the semifinal. It's Carl Olson, the man from California, driving the Cool and Olson Top Fuel dragster. He'll be matched up against that amazing Chevrolet from Cincinnati, Westchester, Ohio's own Jim Booker. So in funny car, Don Prudhomme has been dominating the action across the country all year long. He's doing it here. He'll meet against Kosti Ivanov in the semifinal round. Ivanov from Boston, Massachusetts. Gene Snow back on the winning trail again. The Snowman from Fort Worth, Texas will be against the Fireball Vega, Paul Smith doing the driving. In Pro Stock, what can you say? The man set the national record here at National Trail about a month ago. He right now has got low elapsed time. That's Bobby Ewell driving Billy the Kid Steps car from Dayton, Ohio. He's up against Roy Hill. Bob Glidden in the Ford Pinto will be meeting up against Joe Satmary, and that's the way the semifinals are, the best in the country and some of the greatest racing you'll ever see at this Spring Nationals.
And let's go back to the action right now.
On the starting line, you see it in the right-hand lane, Carl Olson, the Cool and Olson team from El Toro, California. The Chevrolet out of Westchester, Ohio, Jim Booker. Carl Olson snapping down his face visor. Jim Booker, they leave the line together, and what great racing here at the 10th Annual NHRA Spring National.
It's going to be Carl Olson, a speed of 228 miles an hour, a time of 6.18. The losing effort, 6.36, 208 miles an hour.
Carl Olson very consistent throughout eliminations thus far in the mid-teens, 6:15 to 6:18. There you see him with a big lead and the big win over Jim Booker. That puts him into the finals.
This should be a tremendous matchup. Gary Beck, very popular, winning quite a few races the past year or so. John Wiebe, the defending champion, the national Trail Raceway Spring Nationals from last year. He'll be in the left lane, Gary Beck in the right lane.
Beck from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Of course, John Wiebe from Newton, Kansas. Both cars stay, both cars lead.
And Beck is off to a tremendous start.
Unbelievable run for Gary Beck. And there you see it, the first 5-second time ever recorded at National Trail Raceway. And look at the speed, 245 miles an hour. Incredible speeds out of Gary Beck's machine. You see him wavering just a little, but that's really not affecting him at all. He blasts through the quarter mile at 245 miles an hour in 5.98 seconds, definitely outclassing John Wiebe.
And to the funny car, Don Prudhomme against Kosti Ivanov. Ivanov in the left lane. There's a look at him. Don Prudhomme in the right lane, and this should be a tremendous matchup.
East versus West with Kosti Ivanov from Boston, Massachusetts. Don Prudhomme, they call him the Snake, from Granada Hills, California, has dominated funny car racing thus far this year. Let's see if he can go all the way here at the Spring Nationals.
And Ivanov having all kinds of trouble getting the rubber on the track, not holding. Don Prudhomme, another winner, a time of 6.45, a speed of 216 miles an hour.
Another 6:45 for Don Prudhomme. He has been very consistent. You see there the difference. No smoke at all out of the car of Prudhomme, the Plymouth Barracuda. He knows he's got it won, the parachute coming out as he crosses the finish line.
Gene Snow against Paul Smith. Smith in the left lane and Snow in the right lane. And Snow been around a long time. He's a consistent winner.
Sure has. He's had his ups and downs the past couple of years, but concentrating now on this new Vega-bodied funny car. In the right-hand lane, the Revell Snowman, Gene Snow. The Fireball Vega, Phillips and Shores. From Boynton Beach, Florida, Paul Smith, the driver. You see a close shot of Paul and his intense concentration on the Christmas tree.
We have pre-stage, stage, and they're off, and all kinds of trouble for Paul Smith as Gene Snow breezes on through, and Paul Smith unable to keep it in line.
Not only unable to keep it in line, even in his lane. As you can see him there, passing through the quarter mile ahead of Gene Snow's push truck. Paul Smith, let's watch this one on slow motion. The car losing traction and crossing over into Gene Snow's lane. Anytime you cross the lane lines, the outer extremity of the strip or the centered line, as you'll see him do here in just a moment, automatic disqualification, but the race was lost anyway as Gene Snow streaks on to take the win in the semifinal and move into the final to face up against Don Prudhomme. Pro Stock will be coming out next, and what great racing we've seen here, but we see a problem, it looks like. This is the low ET holder thus far in the national record holder. Billy the Kid Steps car, Bobby Ewell driving. They apparently cannot get it started. A crowd pushing him. Bobby Ewell sitting there as mechanic Paul Frost inside the car trying to check out what may be wrong with it. Billy Stepp, the car owner, coming up to push the car back. And a tough break for Bobby Ewell. He had low time here at 9.06 seconds. His competitor, Roy Hill, getting a single. Easy run to go into the final, and a very dejected Billy the Kid Stepp from Dayton, Ohio. A tough break for the national record holder.
Roy Hill just taking his time on this one, 9.944, I would say, for a run. Doesn't matter because he didn't have to really go all out.
No, and a very tough break for the car that held low elapsed time. Here are the remaining two cars in the semifinal round. Ford versus Chevrolet, small engine, small car, Ford Pinto, that's Bob Glidden. Joe Satmary, the big block Camaro, and Satmary with another great start. Let's see if he can hold on to take the win.
Bob Glidden, the winner, a time of 9.10, a speed of 152 miles an hour.
Satmary very good and very sharp at the start, but just not quite enough horsepower to stand off the charge of the Ford Pinto. The guy that won the Pro Stock Eliminator title at the Nationals last year, Bob Glidden from Greenwood, Indiana.
Spring Nationals 1974 will continue after station identification.
Chuck Poole's Chuck Wagon, an exhibition vehicle here at the 10th Annual NHRA Spring Nationals. Ted, this vehicle is designed, it's a Volkswagen truck, designed to travel the quarter mile on its rear wheels only. You saw the gust of wind catch him and move him from the left lane to the right lane. They're steerable just like any other vehicle.
Now let's move to the finals. First of all, the super stock. Bobby Warren of Clinton, North Carolina, his 67 Camaro, against Butch Leal of Northridge, California, in his 65 Plymouth. Leal in the left lane.
If anybody had to be considered a favorite in any category, it's Butch Leal in super stock, and there you see Bobby Warren with the head start, but Butch Leal coasting to a stop at the starting line. Obviously something breaking in the drive line, and a tough break for him. Butch Leal, definitely a favorite in super stock. The winning time for Bobby Warren, 11:44. We'll see it again, and here you see the car coming up and then going nose to the ground. Means something probably let go in the drive line. Bobby Warren of Clinton, North Carolina, recent winner of the Sports National Superstock title, now the Spring Nationals champion.
Butch Leal's car being pushed away. That's Leal with his hand on the door there. A very disgusted man right now, very dejected after having come that close and then having something break in the car.
Most drivers will say they would rather get beat than have some mechanical failure do them under.
In the finals of the modified eliminator, this is Joseph DeSantis of Sharpsville, Pennsylvania, in his 1923 T-model Ford. He'll be going against Jerry Alt of Dayton, Ohio, in his 63 Vet. Alt in the left lane and DeSantis in the right lane.
I can assure you that Henry Ford never had any idea that a 23 Ford Roadster, even though it be a fiberglass replica body, would ever be quite in this configuration. Capable of speeds upwards of 150 miles an hour, DeSantis giving away a big head start to Jerry Alt, and here comes the Roadster. Powered by a late model Hemi engine, it's very close at the finish line. Oh, 9:15, a new national record.
9:15 for Joseph DeSantis, the losing time 10.99 for Jerry Alt. Let's look at it again.
You can see DeSantis changing the gears and the car bouncing on every gear change, and it is very, very close. Going into the first speed trap, you see pulling alongside DeSantis, moving ahead by about 3 to 4 feet to take the win over Jerry Alt.
Now to the finals of the competition eliminator. And it'll be Dave Weir of Spring Valley, New York, 32 Bantam Austin, against Russ Flegel of Indianapolis, Indiana, in his Chevrolet.
Here we've got the dragster against the altered. This is handicap racing. The head start will be going to the altered car. There you see Dave Weir, and the lights counting down in a staggered fashion. Weir with the lead over Russ Flegel. Flegel trying to play catch-up from Indianapolis, Indiana, and it's going to be tough. 9 seconds flat for the altered. Here you see the head start to Weir. He drifts towards the right just a little bit, but he straightens it back out, follows right down the center of the lane, defeating Russ Flegel for the second major event in a row. Russ Flegel in the runner-up position in Comp Eliminator.
We have indeed seen some great racing, and now we are down to the finals. Dave, let's run down those quickly.
Ted, we talked just before the semifinals about how Gary Beck is dominating Top Fuel, and I guess you can say he's doing it at a 5:98, the first 5-second time ever turned on this National Trail quarter mile, and an unbelievable speed of 245 miles an hour plus. Gary Beck will meet up against Carl Olson, the Cool and Olson team from El Toro, California. In funny car, Prudhomme and Gene Snow. That's the way it matches up. Don the Snake from Granada Hills, Gene Snow out of Fort Worth. And this is the first time in a long while that Gene Snow's been in the winner's circle. It's been a long time coming, or at least in a shot at the winner's circle for a good while. And Snow right now is sitting in the favorite spot. He turned the lower elapsed time in the round before. He has the choice of lanes and is very, very strong. In Pro Stock, a tough break, as was seen a few moments ago by Bobby Ewell. In Billy the Kid Steps' car by unable to start, putting Roy Hill with a single. He'll meet up against Bob Glidden and the Ford Pinto in the final. And in the new Pro Comp category, 2 AA gas dragsters, Dave Mack from Monrovia, Maryland, and from Canoga Park, California, Jimmy Scott driving the Weiss and Scott car, the national record holder, so far been the best in the field. We'll see how it turns out.
The Pro Comp Eliminator, the final round, Jim Scott of Canoga Park, California, and he'll be going against Dave Mack of Monrovia, Maryland.
Both these cars are the same class, Ted. They are both gas dragsters, a little bit different approach. Scott using Al Weiss's early model Chrysler engine in the right-hand lane, the late Milodon aluminum engine in Dave Mack's car. Let's watch this. This is close. Oh, 7:23, the winning time to a losing 7:34. A bit off pace for both cars, but Jimmy Scott annexing another national title. He won the Gator Nationals, the Sports Nationals, and now the Spring Nationals. It's on the far lane, the lane away from us. You see Jimmy Scott getting there just a hairbreadth before Dave Mack.
One of the more popular categories, the Pro Stock, the finals. Bob Glidden of Greenwood, Indiana, his 73 Pinto, against Roy Hill of High Point, North Carolina, his 73 Duster.
Roy Hill, though not quite equal to performance of the Pinto, had to take a shot at the tree. He tried it and lost. Roy Hill, the High Point, North Carolina Duster, at the starting line, left just a little bit early. And you'll see it right here. Is the front end of the car coming up before Bob Glidden moved. The jubilant crew in the background, because that win worth some $12,000 to Bob Glidden. As Roy Hill crosses the finish line first, but back at the starting line, the thing that negated all the efforts, that big red eye, and a red light start for Roy Hill.
Very discouraging to see, too, I would imagine, at this point. Come that far and lose to a red light. Now the funny car, the finals, and it should be a whale of a matchup. Gene Snow going against this man, Don Prudhomme. Granada Hills, California. He'll be in the lane nearest to you. And Gene Snow of Fort Worth, Texas, in the far lane. Here's a look at Gene.
It's a long time between drinks of water for Gene Snow. At one time, he dominated funny car racing. Back about 1970, he won 3 major NHRA national events and was runner-up at 2 others. Since then, it's been a period of ups and downs. Don Prudhomme dominating racing early in the season, and Gene Snow with a big lead at this moment. Let's see, can he hold on? A bit of smoke he does, and Gene Snow with an upset win takes the title Spring Nationals champion over Don Prudhomme. The times there, Snow turning a 6.46 second to a losing 6:68 for Don Prudhomme.
A tremendous Spring National for Gene Snow this year. Now let's go to the top fuel, the finals, and this will pit Gary Beck of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, against Carl Olson of El Toro, California. And both of these men have had a tremendous Spring Nationals meet so far.
Certainly have, Ted. Gary Beck from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, just established a new track record at National Trail Raceway of 5.98 seconds at 245 miles an hour plus. He is pitted against this long, slender yellow bullet of Carl Olson, the team of Cool and Olson of El Toro, California. Beck, the national champion, 2 times in a row. Carl Olson, one of the finest drivers ever to hit the quarter-mile sport. From El Toro, he drives Mike Cool's dragster powered by the Donovan. He has won the Winter Nationals. You see him cool, collected, peering out from his helmet. The safety equipment, the fire protective devices that are worn by the drivers, not only the suit, but also the Nomex sock over the head and the face. The burnout very strong, heating up those tires to the utmost. Gary Beck getting pushed back. He is from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and right now the #1 racer in the country in Top Fuel Eliminator.
Dave, I would imagine at this time, too, the mechanics are hoping they've got it all together, that everything is working the way it should, that they've tuned the engine, and they've left nothing to chance and have forgotten nothing.
There's nothing left to save it for, Ted. This is the one where you just build the most horsepower you think the track will hold, dial in as much clutch as you can, and hope everything holds together for 1,320 feet. Let's see.
It's going to be very close. Which one will it be? Gary Beck, a time of 6.05 at 247 miles an hour.
247.25 miles an hour to be exact. Only the second time in history that a speed that fast has been turned on a quarter mile, and you're seeing it right here at the NHRA Spring Nationals. Gary Beck, the champion Top Fuel Eliminator from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
The 1974 10th Annual NHRA Spring Nationals are now history. And let's recap briefly, Dave, the pro category, starting with the amazing performance of Beck.
I'll tell you, Ted, it is very difficult to, you use up all your superlatives is what you do when you talk about a racer like Gary Beck. From Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, the two-time national champion has now added a Spring Nationals crown to his credit. That means in the last 3 major NHRA events, he has won 2 and been in the finals at the 3rd. He won the Winter Nationals, was runner-up at the Gator Nationals, and now has won the Spring Nationals. Where will it all stop? The way he's racing, it's hard to tell.
And in the funny car, the winner was Mr. Snow.
Gene Snow back again in the winner's circle, and a pleasure to see him there. He won many races back in the late 60s and early 70s, has been sort of up and down the past couple of years, but right now had it all together at this Spring Nationals.
And in the Pro Stock, Bob Glidden.
Bob Glidden won the U.S. Nationals in Pro Stock in only his 2nd year of competition. This proves that he's definitely in the ballpark and one to watch for the rest of the season.
Thank you, Dave, for joining us. Dave McClellan, the voice of the National Hot Rod Association. Thanks to some other people now, Clark and Ben Rader of the National Trail Raceway for the fine effort they put forth. They track in excellent condition this year. And, of course, to Wally Parks, the president of the National Hot Rod Association. That's it from National Trail Raceway, Columbus, Ohio. I'm your host, Ted Mullins. Thanks for joining us, and so long, everybody.